You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
Each year, 10,000 tourists visit Ocean Beach. This summer, Ocean Beach has attracted something else. American International presents Tentacles. It slept until man disturbed it. Then it woke with a fury no man could control.
It was a violent summer storm. Millions of volts slashed the earth.
That was the worst storm we've had since I was knee-high to a duck.
Folks talked about it and started getting things back to normal. When Mick hit town for his vacation.
Well, it's straight ahead about 5 miles.
But things weren't normal. There were changes.
Mother bit me. I never saw him bite like that.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. And at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoid, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, we are doing a rare, pure comedy episode, so join that sleaze.
It is kind of rare, so think about it.
It's exciting.
We also decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover over there. Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for 7+ years at this point. There's like 190, maybe even 200 bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series, which we're at like 50 or 60 of at this point, where we talk about new release genre films that come out throughout the year. So we haven't made the jump yet. Patreon.com/SleazoidsPodcast. Speaking of which, we're going to give the people their shout outs right here. We had Corey Reynolds sign up for $5 a month. We had Tom Chapman, we had Hayden, Pete, Dustin Ponder, Will O'Donnell, Luke, Thrillhouse Cycling, Robert Rodier Potter, Adam Smith, Shane O'Connor, Sam Stant, Joey Fazoli, and that's a sick name, by the way, and Andy Britton. And then we had a number of people also make the jump to the annual tier for a little bit of a discounted monthly rate. If you're interested in that, that was Dalton Anderson, Bowden Brage, Emmett Booth, and Louis Philippe Cavano. So thanks so much to all of you folks. Hope you're enjoying all those bonus episodes. We appreciate that support.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're listening on either one of those platforms, and I can see the stats, I can see you right now listening on both those platforms, give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the last plug, as always, is merch. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for our show, you can get that put on basically anything that you guys can think of. And you freaks thought of a lot of stuff. You have gotten notebooks, you have gotten hoodies, hats, pillows. If you're interested in anything like that, the link is in the description of this episode, as well as our website, sleazoidspodcast.com. That is it for the intro. Welcome back another week over here. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I believe 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks would have heard from us over on the main feed, where we would have had special returning guest Andrew Jupin of the We Hate Movies podcast on to discuss the old-fashioned earnest appeal of the Man of Steel and his cousin. Where we did a double feature of Richard Donner's very sincere and grandiose 70s adaptation of the character of Superman, starring Christopher Reeve, and we paired it with Jeannot Swark's cheaper, campier attempt at a feminist spin-off in Supergirl from 1984, starring Helen Slater.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love the original Superman. I love Reeves' performance. It's just so sincere, and just the subtle things he does with his physicality, just like slouching and then not slouching, and somehow that works. I think that's hilarious. And Supergirl, not great, but I do think that Slater's sincerity is trying to kind of replicate Reeves.
The tone of Jamie's voice switching there is probably what you need to know about.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't even notice it. It was just natural. But yeah.
So you haven't heard that episode again 2 weeks ago over on the main feed right here. But last week, though, over on the Patreon, exclusively for the patrons, we actually did your guys' patron-voted episode, because once every 2 months, we let you guys nominate the double feature. You guys vote on the one you want to hear us talk about the most, and you guys picked a nasty one for last week. We did 2 early 1970s thrillers where city dwellers travel to the countryside and wind up fighting for their lives in conflicts with the locals. That pairing was Sam Peckinpah's controversial 1971 exploitation Powder Keg Straw Dogs and John Borman's pretty equally grueling and shocking Deliverance from 1972, both obviously also connected by a central theme there of violence as a rite of passage into manhood.
Yeah, let me tell you, I felt like I was fighting for my life, trying to be as articulate as possible during that episode. Just given what we had to talk about. Thank you guys so much for voting that one in. Lovely films.
Yeah, so patreon.com/SleazoidsPodcast. Once again, if you haven't heard that episode, that was last week over on the bonus feed. But moving on to this week, however, we are once again joined by a very special returning guest, a wonderful underground outsider artist who directed a number of incredible shot-on-video horror films that we have covered on this show, including films like Red Spirit Lake, including films like Twisted Issues. That guest is Charles Pinion. Charles, how you doing, man? Welcome back.
I am good. Yeah. Boy, Deliverance and Straw Dog, that's a rough...
Hey, blame our listeners in
100%. Yeah, that would be a terrible date night.
The worst, probably. The worst double feature you could possibly
Actually, the worst is Looking for Mr. Goodbar. That's the one wwhere...
Yeah, I've heard about that one.
The lights come up after that. You're like, you want to go back to... never mind.
Yeah. My mother-in-law very constantly talks about the fact that some dude in the 70s took her on a date to see A Clockwork Orange. She was like, that was not the move, man.
Oh, man. Do you think he knew?
But Charles, man, we are so stoked to have you back. And before we get into this classic exploitation drive-in double feature sort of pairing that you've brought with you this week, part of this reunion that we've got going on today is that you recently completed a long journey and a long-awaited restoration of your debut film, Twisted Issues, which is going to be coming out on Blu-ray at the end of next month in all of its gory punk rock glory, which inspired us to, finally invite you to Toronto and to screen it at the Revue Cinema on August 4th and to do a Q&A with us about the film. For all of our listeners, tickets are available for that screening now at the link in the description of this episode. But I just wanted to throw that in up front here because we are so unbelievably excited to meet you in person, to be part of hosting and screening the Canadian theatrical premiere of this movie that we love. And we wanted to ask you up front, just like, how was the journey getting that restoration done? And how do you feel now that it's like it's going out into the world and you're being asked to bring it to the sickos of Canada?
Well, first of all, I'm comforted to know that there are sickos in Canada.
Right.
That helps me have some confidence about the screening. It's a grueling process to take old VHS tape, digitize it, and get it into the computer. But at the same time, it's so wonderful because the tapes are the camera masters. In other words, they're right from the heads of the camera to the tape, and then they go right from the tape digitized into an editing program. And the nature of videotape has been and always will be, if you're using tape, if you're doing tape to tape, once you've gone from your VHS to that second tape, you've lost a generation. Then you have to take that second tape and maybe put it into a master. Anyway, each time you're losing a generation. And that's kind of why digital is such a revelation in a sense, because it, in a perfect world, it's digit to digit copying. There's no generation loss. Now, much of the aesthetic of watching shot on video stuff is the kind of smeary, softness and weird color shifts and stuff. I mean, that is kind of that is an intrinsic beauty, and I think that people who really love VHS love that. You enter this kind of dream world of smeary colors and so on, and it also, there's an immediacy to it. In the case of say a movie like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, that the using a video camcorder while they're murdering people was an extreme innovation from a point of storytelling, because of that immediacy. Anyway, so back to Twisted Issues. So the result that is on the Blu-ray is literally the camera master going right to the digits, and it looks amazing. And I delivered it to the company, but once I actually got the Blu-ray back and watched it, just watched the Blu-ray, I was just kind of staggered by how good it looks. And it's still VHS. It's never going to be Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, I'm so excited to get in front of a theater of people and have to explain that. Just so you know, this was shot on videotape. It is supposed to look like that.
I mean, that'll be pretty clear early on. Well, that's the thing. I mean, again, it doesn't pretend to not be video, and at no point in the making of it, although I do have this credit from 1988, and it's a film by Charles Pinion, which I've studiedly avoided doing after that, because I'm really not trying to make a film, but it's a nomenclature thing. But anyway, I just say an inferential picture. It's like picture, because picture is encompassing, and a T-shirt can be an inferential picture, and a book can be an inferential picture. I mean, it's I liked that better than a film by. But anyway, Twisted Issues has a film by. But it looks great. I'm super excited about it. The music sounds great.
Yeah, and you said, and you were telling us that playing it in the theater might be the first time that you will have seen it in a theater since it originally came out. So a lot of people in Toronto are going to get an experience that hasn't happened in a very long time.
Yeah,
and actually, in truth, hasn't happened ever, because the theater, we showed it at something called the Orange and Brew, which is more like a Rathskeller kind of, with a sports TV there. But now that I think about it, okay, there's a place called the Hippodrome in Gainesville, which it might actually play at the Hippodrome again in October. And that was a small little art house. I think it seats 78.
Okay.
More like a black box theater type place. And so there was that screening, now that you mention it. But yeah, it will. I haven't seen it since. And the thing is I'm intrigued what it will be like to an audience in 2025, a movie that was made in 1988.
I can't wait to hear that soundtrack on the speakers.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. And if you out there listening to this are in the Greater Toronto area and you want to have the chance to see Charles in the flesh, and you want to get that crazy experience that we're not sure when it's going to be happening again, especially in the Toronto area, definitely come out and join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. We can't wait to sit down with Charles and have him. We're going to get you mic'd up. We're going to get you in a chair. We're going to be like, we're going to grill you a little bit.
All right,
we'll even see
grill away.
Name on
grill
away.
But with the business portion out of the way, or Charles, as the format of the show goes, we have the guest bring a double feature with them, something that's a little, preferably a little personal to them, something they have some history with. So, what two films have you chosen to talk about this week, and what was the thinking behind the pairing together? What's the connective tissue?
The movies I brought, I saw on a drive-in together on the same night.
So cool.
One was a, big in quotation marks movie called Tentacles. And I guess it was trying to cash in on Jaws. It probably was within a year or two of Jaws being released. Except instead of a shark, it's a giant octopus. But it's star-studded. Oh, yeah. And I saw it at age, say, 17 in the drive-in in Delray Beach, Florida. And at the drive-in. And Tentacles is got John Huston, Henry Fonda,
Shelley Winters
Bo
in there.
Hopkins, Shelley Winters, yes, Shelley Winters. it was a time when I just remember there being posters for movies, sort of these star-studded movies, all these people in it, and there'd always be something. One of the things would be, and William Holden as the senator, and it was just this kind of a cliche of that era. It felt like to me was that, and I was not a very sophisticated movie goer, but I could still tell, like, you're just star-studded. You're shoving it full of stars, and maybe that's fun. I mean, The Longest Day, I think, has, is one of those too. It's like, and all these, and for that matter, The Thin Red Line. I mean, certain stories require that level of scope, I suppose. So that's okay. Don't have a critique of that. But anyway, that was the movie Tentacles. And the second movie was SQUIRM, a movie also from the mid-'70s. And no one in it I recognized. And I loved it so much. Super engaging. But to my 17-year-old mind, who wasn't even thinking like I was going to be a filmmaker at all, I just remember thinking to myself, wow, this is a hell of a lot more interesting, and storytelling. I'm more intrigued, and moments of glorious effects and things like that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, but but Rick Baker worked on SQUIRM, for a movie that doesn't have stars in it, there is some impressive, attempt at effects work there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just the personal part of it is that I took that in. The fact that I remembered it all is I took that in as, note to self. You don't have to have fill in the blank. I mean, the best paints. There's all kinds of ways to look at it. You don't have to have the most expensive paints. You can still paint a compelling picture, You don't have to have a super fancy guitar. You can bang out something, I mean, that's kind of like a theme of my whole, artistic approach really has been just to, use what you have to make what you want to. And, and that still is.
So whether he knew it or not, 17-year-old Charles, there was something percolating about, hey, this guy didn't have a whole lot of money, but he made a pretty compelling movie.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, I'm very excited for the fact that this is a legitimate drive-in double feature of the era. Again, both sort of post-Jaws, sort of creature feature, revenge of nature kind of eco-horror films going on here. Obviously, one with an octopus, one with some worms. I will say the wordplay of SQUIRM as a title, I think, is just fantastic. I love the poster for that movie as well. But Charles, if we're jumping in here, do you want to do it in the order you saw it in? Is that how you watched it? Do you want to do like?
I think so because then I reviewed it in that order as well.
Sure,
perfect. Yeah. Well, that sounds cool. It's just funny because normally when we're doing the show, we would do the same thing. We'd go, oh, A picture, B picture, and we would go, oh, the maybe the more popular one, which now when we look online is actually SQUIRM, which is funny, and then sometimes we do chronology, so we would do SQUIRM first too. But when I was thinking, when you said that it was the more popular, it makes sense to me now. It's just the way that we watch movies for the first time in the internet era, it's so skewed. But obviously Tentacles was the bigger movie when that came out.
Yeah,
so
it being
that makes a lot of
Jaws. They're just probably like, here we go,
and just having such bigger name actors and having more money. And so, but I'm very down to do that. So let's do it. Let's jump into this 70s grindhouse double feature here. We are going to be talking about Tentacles.
The ocean floor to bring destruction and death. Tentacles. A chilling tale of nature gone wild as two of the sea's deadliest enemies fight to the death. Starring John Huston, Shelley Winters, Bo Hopkins, Claude Akins, and Henry Fonda. Tentacles. The most gripping suspense you'll ever experience. Rated PG.
All right, we are talking Tentacles, aka Tentacoli, the 1977 creature horror film directed by Video G. Assonitis. That's usually in Italian's not the worst for me for pronunciating, but that's a difficult name there. Written by 3 writers, apparently: Stephen W. Karabastos, Jerome Max, and Tito Carpi, and starring a pretty unbelievable cast, as Charles already alluded to here. John Huston, Shelley Winters, Bo Hopkins, Henry Fonda, for some reason, as various reporters and marine biologists and company men who are investigating disappearances that are taking place in a seaside resort town that may or may not be being caused by a giant murderous octopus. This is our first time talking about the Italian B-movie producer and director Video here, who worked as a film distributor in the 60s, and then in the 70s was a producer of Italian giallo films like Who Saw Her Die and the absolutely bonkers The Visitor from 1979, which, Jamie, I don't know if you remember that one.
I remember parts.
The satanic Atlanta basketball team owner who like tries to bring about the apocalypse with like a demon baby, and there's telekinetic kids and violent birds, and John Huston also appears in that briefly, and Glenn Ford's in that, Lance Henriksen, and Sam Peckinpah shows up as the doctor they hire to try to abort the demon baby. It's a crazy movie.
And Huston got that role because of this movie, so that's pretty wild that there's that connection there.
Yeah, so, but regardless, like, as a producer, this guy, you know, even briefly oversaw the Cannon group for 1 year, 1989 to 1990, as they were going bankrupt, and basically just helped further their losses at the time. Mm-hmm. So he's had a very strange career, but before all that, he transitioned to directing himself in the mid-1970s, very much with that B-movie financial market sort of mindset, leading to his biggest success, which was a movie called Beyond the Door, which was famously or infamously, however you want to say it, referred to as the Italian Exorcist, because he originally tried to buy the rights to Blatty's book, but was denied. And after Friedkin's film came out, he basically deliberately wrote a copycat knockoff film that made enough money, including overseas, that he was sued by Warner Brothers over copyright infringement. We don't know what the settlement was, but there was a settlement.
Have you seen it? I haven't seen any of his other movies.
I have actually not seen it yet. I've been meaning to see it. There was a screening of it, I think, last year that I would just happen to be busy the night, and I kind of want to have that experience with that film, because I know that it does, of his movies, it's the one that I feel like gets the most, like, to this day kind of cult revival audience to it. And, you know, like, needless to say, this guy...
I would be curious what he does differently.
I saw it when it came out.
Oh, you did?
He said raising his hand in the back. Yeah.
No.
I remember the poster, and I remember the color green a lot in it, if I remember it correctly. Doorway, hallway, fog, smoke. And I really wanted something that was basically exactly like The Exorcist, you know? I mean, as a kid and as a consumer.
Yeah, I would be curious to see, like, just what he does differently aesthetically. Like, if it's the same story, that'd be fine almost, if he's just doing it differently stylistically. I think that'd be really interesting.
The funny thing is, I don't think I saw it as the same story at all, other than there was a possessed girl.
Okay.
But again, I'm not the most sophisticated guy, but I just remember, like, I just loved it. I was just like, oh my God. And
so you liked it. You liked it more than Tentacles on your first watch.
Oh fuck yeah! And yeah, I didn't know this guy's filmography at all. In fact, I didn't realize it was Italian until I just watched it. I as a note, I've not seen either film since until I watched both of them today. As a refresher. So, for example, now that I'm still unsophisticated, but now that I know a little bit more, I go, oh, it's Italian. And then I can see the way some of the actors were gesturing, and their hand gestures, and wait, they're Italian, and so whatever. I mean, the thing is more than anything, my critique of it is just this sort of like flat, bright lighting, and the shots weren't that interesting, and I mean, can I just start talking about it? I was making notes as I was just like, but because most of the notes are about SQUIRM because I liked it so much, and but in general, just there's a staticness to it. I can see why. I guess I would not be surprised if the days weren't that long or whatever. I mean, he was on schedule because it's just you're doing these wide shots and you're doing this. you know, the lighting, if it's a lot of it exteriors at the, you know, at the marina or whatever, you're going to have a bright light and overhead and, you know, like Jaws, like anything else, but somehow Jaws, you know, somehow the frames look prettier in Jaws.
As a pairing with Jaws, it's a very instructive on what a director does, I think, in terms of like you can have similar scenes of a rubber creature attacking people, and you can have actors sitting around and talking about it and all of this. Like on a most like technical level, there's a lot of like what appeals to people about Jaws in this movie. It's just it is very flatly and very dryly done. There's very little momentum to it. There's very little like, it feels like even when you're briefly hanging out with a character, like other than the few eccentricities that some of these actors are maybe able to put into the performance, there's not much to like the characters as they exist. They do feel very mechanical, get me to the next thing that I'm doing. And
I also find them to be
very just... Oh, go ahead.
I also find them to be very like disconnected to one another, even when they're supposed to be. Like I find Jaws, although I think Jaws has more of a focus on particular characters, which really does help it. But with this one, I find as they jump from character to character, kind of like these little subplots that go around the monster, I just didn't feel how they were all kind of cohesive. And so with each jump, it felt very jarring and disconnected, and eventually I guess some of it comes together, but even when it does, it still feels just janky, and it feels like uneven, and its pacing is very drawn out at a certain point that I didn't love. I did kind of like some of the style that comes from the Italian directors, like they're some of the time he'll hold on to a shot, I think, longer than an American director would. And sometimes that makes the pacing bad, but then other times I found it to be just slightly more interesting than what you would have gotten from your conventional, I don't know, American blockbuster or something like that.
He does a lot of I've been holding on this shot too long, so I'm going to cut to another shot. But the set piece isn't the set piece actually isn't developing, so I'm going to cut back to the shot again and go back to that. And there's a lot. You feel like you're like, I've been watching this diver for like 5 minutes. I don't really know if he's found anything yet.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess he'll keep looking. I mean, at some point, I'm sure he'll find something here. I felt that a lot while I was watching this, and I felt like, and we'll compare it with SQUIRM when we do it. But like there's nothing wrong, I think. Like we've talked a lot about B-movie knockoffs on this film and on this show, and there's been so many of them where it does liberate them to go and be like, I'm going to do my version of that sequence, and people are going to come and see it, but I get to have fun with it. And it just feels like this one is just exactly as advertised. It doesn't feel like it has a ton of fun. It's just like, no, we're going to do the boating sequences. We're going to do the creature looking up at people swimming. And whereas SQUIRM, when I was watching it, I was like, oh, here is someone who's like, I'm going to do a revenge of nature scenario that's more personal to actual fears that I have. And I'm going to realize it. And I'm going to do this like Southern regional sort of, I'm going to have this consistent atmosphere to it that kind of runs through it, a sense of dread even to it. I felt like I was watching this, and in the early goings, I'll say, the very beginning of this, when we are introduced to, sort of John Huston and his character Ned Turner, who is the sort of amusingly kind of aging, the former sort of respected star newspaper reporter in this film, and he is essentially investigating these mysterious disappearances and sort of grisly corpses that are popping up. That he is the one to be like, I think that this is some sort of infernal beast, or there's something out there. And hearing John Huston just say something like that, it has enough pizzazz to it that you're kind of like, okay, he's trying to set something up for the filmmakers to later cash in on when they show you this thing. And in the early moments of this film, they do learn that Jaws' lesson of the, sometimes a little mystery and a little playfulness with the camera is mostly what you need to actually convey dread. And I thought that this kind of peaked with its opening sort of like murders that it does.
Sure,
when you have that, sort of like, I think one of the best sequences in the entire movie is the mom and her baby enjoying a little picnic on like the shoreline, and you just get this octopus like point of view, like slasher stalker cam as it's swimming just above the the sort of the water level, getting closer towards them. And they do this moment where she runs across the street to like catch up with an old friend, and the camera sort of reverses sides over so that it's looking at her, and you can see the stroller in the background, and the camera slowly, classic 70s slow zoom on that little fatso, as she calls him, in the stroller across the street all alone. And the dread of just being like, well, you know, that stroller's getting yanked into the water, I just know it. And the fact that, you know, they do a little cheapo limitation thing where they have the bus pass by and disrupt our view, and then it's gone. But it's a creepy moment, and especially when
really
that
is. Yeah,
and you have that little like giallo, like funky prog rock, like da 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 da, like kind of hit as the bus passes, and there's a little bit of mood to it. And I kind of went, if that's what this movie is, I think I will actually enjoy this movie. And I was just a little disappointed that as it went on, the sequences got very, very samey. It got very just like, oh, there's another rubber tentacle having a tug of war match with like some object in a incomprehensible close up underwater. And I was like, okay,
certain moments too just felt strange, just because this is when we were looking at SQUIRM, it's like a clean 90 minutes, and with this it's about like it's 100 minutes or something. And I was thinking, well, you know, maybe we'll have more effects with the tentacles or something along those lines, or there's just more character development. I have no idea why they needed the extra time. But then you watch the movie, and a lot of it is just like these really elongated, drawn out scenes of them like diving and looking for the thing, or just kind of like, you know, beach people on the beach and enjoying themselves, which you need to establish that, but it just goes on for so long.
There is like a 10-minute montage of people just like having fun on the beach while the score plays for a while, and I was like, clearly the filming day was like the actors are going to just really go to like some sort of 4th of July, like, you know, celebration. We're going to just guerrilla shoot them because they can't even use the audio, and it became very apparent watching the whole sequence. I was like, this 10 minutes, eh? All right.
Right. There's also these moments that come with the style that I thought were going to lead to something, but they don't quite. There's this moment where I think it's in the yacht race, and they're kind of doing this thing
yacht
where they
race.
go back.
No, dude, come on, those are just little tiny sailboats. These
they keep don't
young.
They call it the yacht race? Like,
do they call it yacht race? That's very funny if they do.
I don't know the terminology for these boats, but regardless, they're racing boats, and so
it's true.
They're going around, and you get kind of a switch between the POV of the the octopus, and then just the footage of the actual racing. And then they do this weird thing where they start to do kind of a freeze frame of different shots, and it almost feels like it's leading up to this really tense thing. And for some reason my brain started to do way more work than it needed to, and I started thinking like, maybe this will be a cool setup for like, this is gonna, for the town, it would be this historic moment where a bunch of kids die in a race from this octopus, and so they're making it like it's photos from that moment, and then it stops doing that, and it just goes back to it, and then it doesn't do anything with it. And I was just like, oh, so I couldn't tell, like, if
you just wasted my time,
or my brain power.
yeah.
my critic brain here. So it was there's moments like that were kind of strange.
Was there did this live up to your memory, Charles, or was this like, was 17-year-old more engaged, or did you feel the pacing a little bit more now?
Well, some of it I was like making out or something, because drive-ins were that too, you know, and there's a possibility that was going on, and then you know.
Of the double feature, this was the one, I think, to wait to use your time that way.
No, exactly. No, that's it. I mean, that's it.
After SQUIRM came on, you were like, just got get bored, off, man.
I'm like, let's get exactly.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, with that opening that you described, you know, with the baby, I missed that she called him fatso, because I'm thinking, good eating. If I was a tentacle thing. But that made me go, you know, Charles, maybe you were too hard on it as a kid, you know, and then, but then as it went on, and, you know, I mean, I love John Huston, obviously, but he's so unconvincing as a reporter. I don't see him as an intrepid reporter at all. I see him having a cocktail and, you know, like, I mean, although God knows what a reporter is anymore. I don't even go there, but, I mean, but to me, he doesn't even occupy that kind of archetype at all of a reporter.
Yeah, he kind of has like a very laid back performance, given that his character is supposed to really care about this like underground tunnel that's being developed, and that's what's pissing off the octopus. But
right,
and the scenes are there, like where he's supposed to be, you know, kind of arguing with either Fonda or Fonda's assistant and all of that. But he just, the way he delivers it is very much like, it's very passive. The dialogue isn't, but the way that he delivers it is.
Exactly.
And it is kind of strange that
on
way.
On paper, he is this aggressive. You know, I'm hearing the words, but he's just not giving it. Anyway, I'm no expert on acting, but I just thought,
no.
Wow,
Well, did you guys know that they originally tried to get John Wayne for this part? Apparently,
and he did agree to it, right? He was sick or something.
Yeah, he ended up getting sick, and then they moved on to Henry Fonda, who, weirdly enough, I actually do see as like more of like a.
He could have pulled it off. He could have pulled it off.
Like a reporter trying to, you know, be like, I have a moral compass and I'm trying to fight back against the man or whatever. But I guess apparently he also ended up suffering some sort of accident, and so he needed to have his role reduced. But he had already been paid for the role, so that's why he ends up being just the sort of the, you know, meant to be the shady businessman, but again, it's Henry Fonda, so he's kind of nice, and you're kind of like,
I know.
He's kind of nice about it a little bit, yeah. Even when he's
where would this be in compared, you know, in time to Once Upon a Time in the West? Because that, of course, was the Henry Fonda. Because I went with my parents, so
I'm going to make him an evil child killer in the first 5 seconds, you know, like.
Yeah, I saw it in 8th grade. Now I remember with my parents and my mom. You know, Henry Fonda. You know, like, you know, palpitating heart, blue eyes. You know, I'm there, and I just remember leaving Once Upon a Time in the West, and my mom just like inarticulately not outraged, but just sort of moved. I mean, moved definitely, but just sort of like, why she really. Because he still had those blue eyes and everything. Anyway,
when we did our Once Upon a Time in the West episode, we spent a long time being like, yeah, this movie is like, Leone was taking the guy who used to be Wyatt Earp or Abraham Lincoln and was like, I'm going to make this man the most disgusting, cutthroat man you've ever seen. And he nails that performance. But this is about 10 years removed from that. And I will say there's something a little bit like, maybe honestly, if he had been able to play the businessman as more ruthless or cutthroat, maybe he would have been able to have more fun with the performance. But honestly, every time it kind of went to Henry Fonda, he's like on the phone, sitting down, like talking to John Huston or something. I know. And he's just, I really was kind of going, he seems a little sleepy in this movie. He does seem like, you know, he's talking about what tests, what experiments, like, you know, you better tell me right now, Corey, or, you know, you better go back to drilling at regulation this instant, you know, sort of young man, and all that kind of stuff. And it was strange because I did think that there was some effort here to be like, part of the appeal of Jaws is you're hanging out with those central actors who go out on the boat. And in the early goings of this film, the way that they introduce Huston, the way that maybe not even Fonda, but Fonda's role needed to be reduced, so maybe it wouldn't have made sense to have him go on the boat or anything. But like the way that especially they introduce Huston and Bo Hopkins together as the sort of marine biologist character, Will Gleason, who was the sort of former athlete turned like animal whisperer or something, is this very rough and tumble kind of Southern charm, training killer whales or whatever it is that he's doing. And the way that they set that up is I was like, oh, so these two are going to spend the final, you know, third of the movie or whatever it is, they're going to go crazy on a boat fighting a monster or whatever. Right. And the movie spends so long getting to that point, and then it doesn't give you that. It gives you one of those characters going out and doing it. But I was just like, it's so weird that they set up that here are the characters and actors who have personality. They're all the American ones. All the Italian extras, we're not going to give them really anything to do. It's like beautiful wife, number one, played by Delia Borcato, who is in Fernando de Leo's Shoot First, Die Later. We've talked about her before. But, you know, she's given like a sequence where she's part of a boating crew who's attacked. But beyond that, no one really gets anything. And I was just like, oh, this is so strange that they spent just enough time giving you some eccentric personality, especially the Shelley Winters character, I'll say, who plays John Huston's like sort of middle-aged sister who just like is sort of also his best friend and roommate who like drinks and gets laid a lot, like in his apartment or whatever.
Like takes care of the kids that are around. I think one of them is her son, I think, if I wasn't mistaken.
Yes. But, yeah. And I just kind of went, they set up the mood of like, we know that there's going to be this sort of creature sequences. We're showing you the characters who maybe you're going to care enough about once they get put into danger.
Right.
But they are not actually involved in any of the attack sequences or anything like that. It's usually just kind of random characters you've met for the first time, like that one guy who looks suspiciously like Robert Shaw from Jaws, who gets pulled into the water while cleaning his boat, and he gets maybe the most gruesome sort of aftermath part where he's the pale sort of waterlogged corpse who's found by the two kids, and you get sort of that Italian humor in there of the one chubby girl trying to like sexually assault the blonde guy or whatever. He's like, stop, there's a corpse in the lake.
And
then they find out he's been like stripped to the bone or whatever, and
and there is some subtle things that they say, like after when they're talking about the aftermath with the baby, they say they found what's left of the baby, stuff like that I'm at least they're hinting towards a little bit more of like danger and everything. There's not quite something that shows like, it's the obvious comparison because they're doing it on purposely throughout this movie is Jaws, and I'm just thinking of some of those scenes where they were able to express violence and the aftermath, but without showing too much, and still giving that slightly PG-13 blockbuster rating that they're looking for. Because with this, a lot of the time, it's just like people being pulled into the water. There's not too much visceral stuff going on. Like I couldn't really think of anything that compares to, the floating leg in Jaws, or like kind of the mess of the raft blood and the waves when that attack happens to the boy in that one scene in Jaws. And it just, there's ways to go around the fact that you don't want it to be just this complete gore fest, or maybe you don't even have the budget if it's this film. It's just, I found that as it went on, they found like less innovative ideas to show how this octopus could be dangerous. I did like they do a similar thing with SQUIRM, where they kind of do these like harsh close-ups of the creature, and then they add like a little bit of a growl or a scream or something to make it more monstrous. Which, to be honest, because it is a real octopus and it's close up and it's slimy, and then they add the scream, there is something about it that's like, okay, that's kind of a monster, that's kind of a creature. But that's the most they do beyond the giant tentacles that you'll see in like a Italian Ocean or wherever they filmed this.
Well, there was that one moment, but I feel like I only saw it once, where you get kind of a close up of the terrorizing one of the blonde women, and it's like, like I feel like that's when I thought maybe you were busy, Charles, during this, because I definitely came to the beginning of the movie and when I saw it in the drive-in, but I don't remember that one reveal of it felt like a big monstrous comes to the window of the
the eyeball.
And then the last shot of that sequence is this like squishy close up of I don't know, its mouth or its eye or something, and it was just like delicious. Like I know that would have been like cool had I seen it, but so I feel like I might have been distracted during, but again, it has to earn its keep. I'm distracted. It's not so much I'm distracted. It's like, you're boring me, motherfucker.
No, exactly. Wow. That is definitely a part of it. But that's one that I did write down, was when that guy, I think it's like one of the scuba divers gets attacked, and then he has to go back into the bell, and he's rising up, and then he turns.
There's going to be a lot of a scuba diver is attacked.
That is attacked. Like, where else are they going to get attacked? Yeah, I know, right? And so he turns around, and then there's the giant eye staring at him. That was, I thought, probably, it might even be the most effective kind of scare.
I thought it was quite effective. I thought that was quite effective. I was like, okay.
I agree.
And I don't remember it. So I'm like, anyway.
I was just surprised that they do that sequence twice, because they do it where there's like underwater tests they're talking about that the Trojan Incorporated, owned by Mr. Henry Fonda here, is doing. And so that's why he approaches the marine biologist, and he's the one who sends his like two employees, the sort of divers, to go first look at it. They're the ones who get attacked in that sequence where they're following like this sort of, they're inspecting equipment, they're following the sort of trail of sort of electric cables underwater, and they find the sort of giant rubber octopus's hideout in the darkness, and he does reveal himself and ink one of them and yank the other one, and then goes and attacks the other one in that sort of underwater elevator device. And that's what sort of convinces then sort of the Bo Hopkins character to be like, I'm going to go underground myself. And so he does it again, but they just don't have him be attacked. He just goes down there and he goes, hey, there's like, sort of like barrels down here and dead fish with their noses in the sand. And I have deduced that you guys are using ultrasonic drilling techniques with frequencies above regulated levels. And my guess is that you've upset a giant octopus. He figures it out so quickly. And again, it feels like it takes so long to get there. But for me, the most impressive sort of sequence, because it's kind of a dual sequence all in one, is when they have the one where essentially Bo Hopkins's wife is sort of just enjoying, they're acting like they're kind of like on a vacation in the area. And so you have a bunch of Italian boaters who just get to go, and they get sort of stranded, and they're waiting for the Coast Guard to get them. They're, just sort of leisurely swimming at sort of surface level, and you get the little octopus eyes sort of peeking above the water line, and the camera looking up at the swimming legs like in Jaws, and finally unleashing, I think at this point, the full theme, the full like prog rock sort of like giallo sounding theme of it, pulling the people under. And then you get one sort of, I'm not sure exactly how they did the shot. It might have been a small boat that they used, but they have the tentacle arms actually reaching around the entire boat and yanking the entire back of it off while the girl is swimming and all of that. And like, so
that was pretty good.
That's one of the more impressive sort of action beats that exists in the film. And then it's followed by, I thought, one of the more few good looking moments in the film, because you're right that a lot of this is very sort of just, very flat, sort of naturalistic. We put the camera on the location, good enough. But there's a sequence where he follows the blonde woman as the boat goes down, and it turns into a nighttime search for sort of missing boaters, because I think that his wife's sister was the one who was originally attacked. So she goes looking for her. She gets caught out there at night, and you get this entire scene sort of stylishly lit by just one directional light of like the emergency siren, the red light sort of on the buoy. And the woman is sort of swimming around it, and the score is kind of twinkling, and she's just like sort of breathing very stressed out, trying to swim away from this thing. And when you see the octopus pop out of the water, it's dark, it's lit with this red light. You get like this, sort of wet rubber, very just, you're hiding the sort of imperfections of your little creature that you've made. And it's one of the few times it wraps its tentacles like around an actress as the score starts pounding and she starts screaming and all of that. And that was, I just remembered, one of the few stretches of the movie where I was like, oh, the boat attack followed by her looking for her and having a nighttime sequence. I was like, this was one of the few times I was a little bit kind of like, oh, I can see, again, maybe there's limitations here that means they can't go further, but I definitely liked this stuff more than when they just try to kind of eventually fight him at the end. And I was like, oh, this is the same shot over and over again. I think they even lost the giant rubber octopus at one point, and so they literally said it was just like a diver holding like a tentacle arm because it was all they had left, and they were like, I don't know, just use a close-up of the tentacle arm underwater.
I think that the difference is because that one actually feels as if it was in some way like storyboarded through action shots, and then it eventually kind of, and most of the film turns into a lot of these wide shots where you'll see the tentacles maybe wrapping around like an entire body or really just floating in the water. But I think it would have really helped if you had more close-ups of, the tentacles just wrapping around a hand and you actually see it wrap, and it just kind of connects to the physicality of the octopus, as opposed to just constantly seeing it in this wide shot where everything is just a mess. And it's, if you have a general fear of being like underwater and creatures underwater, there's something about any image with tentacles.
Oh, and I like looking
scary.
at underwater like scuba photography in general too.
Right.
And I realize the amount of money they had. They can't do the full like Frogman full scale battle of whatever Connery Bond that is, where they're doing that, or But I mean, Fulci had a zombie fighting a shark, and I feel like if we're talking about Italians, doing underwater photography, I feel like you got to be a little competitive with that. Come on, guys.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I felt like it needed more like very specific action beats, and I thought a lot of the time they were just doing that kind of like tug of war with whatever puppet they had, and it's just it does become a little bit like tedious and just repetitive.
Also, man, when it goes after all the kids in the sailboats, I was like, oh man, you're not going to show us the octopus like dragging a kid under or anything like that. Like it just cuts to all of the boats toppled over, and then all the kids saved on a boat where they go, don't worry, we found them all except for one.
Yeah, that actually really made me mad, because I liked the zoom out of the like all the boats just laid out there and there's nothing there and it's all just calm now after the attack, and it heavily implies that most of them died or something like that. And then having that scene to kind of just alleviate all of that made me just why
even though there was no action beat other than the octopus's head just kind of sticking out of the water in a kind of cool point of view shot where you're like following him swimming and trying to like get closer to the boats, but that's kind of it. They just go, your brain can do the rest. Right. And he caught up to that boat at some point.
The one thing I have to say I did like, because it was just these shots were actually kind of cool, is they set up the orca whales the whole time, and with I think specifically with Will Gleason, his character, and eventually it turns into like literally just octopus versus whales, and you see
that's the only other
fighting.
Sequence of interest, in part because it's so prefabricated to have like some just like silly cult movie fun with it, because that's the moment where you just go, some producer sat in the room and said, and then he fights a killer whale.
That's pretty cool, right? And I do like the like how Bo Hopkins, or I think Will Gleason, he is like, he almost seems in love with the whales. Like he
loves his whales.
He feels he has this deep connection with them. He calls them winter and summer, and they both represent like a different personality.
That romantic monologue he does when he's talking to them about all the good times they've had, and it's all just like it's giving him flashbacks to when he trained them, like in their small little swimming pool and all of that. He's like, you guys are like my best buds, and I don't want to ask anything of you guys, but there's a real bastard out here, and we need you guys to do something about it.
He's ordering his killer whales. Honestly, that was a part of it that I'm like, I'm on board.
Well, he's not even ordering. What's funny is he is asking them. He's like, I'm sorry that I gotta ask you to do this, but fellas, I really need you to kill this octopus for me. He killed this octopus. It killed my wife, and it killed my sister-in-law. And you're gonna need to
fish for life. It's a beautiful thing.
And I gotta be honest, I was looking at how much time was left around the time that this was happening. I was like, there's like 25 minutes left of this movie. There is legitimately about 10 or 15 minutes of like a killer whale shark, or sorry, a puppet, not a shark, a killer whale puppet, just having a tug of war with a tentacle puppet, and it keeps cutting back to like the diver, where you're like, I'm not even sure why you guys are down there, but I guess it's to create a little bit of tension that maybe they're in danger, but he ends up saving the guy, and it just keeps cutting back and back and back to this little fight that they're having, and I'm like, there is no variety, and you've cut back to it so many times, there's no tension anymore. I don't know. These are two rubber objects just kind of flapping in each other's direction.
This thing needs to just be really cut down. It's hard to say if I would take to it even if it was super cut down, but the fact that once you hit those moments and it's so drawn out, you really just start to feel it. And I'm thinking like, maybe I could have just had more fun if it was a clean 80 minutes, so we didn't have to have like 5 to 10 minutes of sitting.
Yeah,
with
it's like an hour and 45 minutes. I really didn't think that they were like it's weird that it felt like they were stretching for time. You feel that more often in a movie that's like trying to hit like 80 minutes or something. This was like a case of like there's like easily 15 or 20 minutes that you could have just, you know, like there's a whole like minute dedicated to a comedian's routine in the 4th of July montage.
Sure, yeah.
And I was like, well, that's easy.
Yeah, that's
gone.
Cut right there. Like, I felt like that was what I was doing halfway through the movie, going like, we'd cut that. No, we definitely cut that. For sure we'd cut
you know, you never know. That comedian might have been the guy who owned the diving bell or whatever.
Yeah, they're like,
that's true.
Let me do my thing, and I'll let you use my diving. You know, I mean, like low budget filmmaking or even big budget filmmaking. But
have you had to make any compromises like that before, Charles? Was there someone who was like, dude, I'll do this, but it needs to be in the movie?
I know that one just has to nimbly jump from situation to situation when you're making a low budget film. I mean, perhaps I will think of something at some point, but it's just all, you know, it's always, hey, you have this skill. Let's put that skill on screen, you know. I mean, in a movie like We Await, for example, the guy who had the wrench hanging from his genitals by piercing, you know, and then she's heating it with a I mean, that was his idea, you know, like awesome. He was, you know, I mean, there's something about using ready-mades, but that's not the same thing as this comedian. It's like, you're in the case of this movie, if what I said is true, you know, okay, we will put your comedian thing in your routine if you let us use your diving bell. I mean, that's just
right. Yeah,
you never know. That's all.
It's
I'm
true.
saying.
That was why that couldn't be cut. It would be. It would make more sense to me.
The one thing that
they definitely could have cut out some of the scuba diving though. That stuff is like a good 5 minutes of it is just. And the thing is, I think underwater footage is very interesting, and I do like watching scuba diving footage. It's just like
there's 3 different scuba diving sequences in this movie.
And they're all kind of the same. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I do like the fish, like the dead fish that were kind of hanging at one. It's like a graveyard of fish at one point that they're swimming through. That was kind of cool, you know.
See, I thought that was. I
didn't know what it meant, but
for some reason I feel like I must have read something once that, you know, certain fish sleep standing, hanging like that. Like I could have just made it up in my head. The way horses will sleep, they're totally standing, but they're sleeping. You know.
I didn't know whether that's
they go. So, whales do something like that, right? Yeah.
But I guess I didn't know if it was like if they were dead or sleeping, and then I thought maybe it was because of the same reason that the octopus is pissed off, that it was the tunnel vibration.
Yeah, it was one of the few moments where I kind of went, oh, there is a larger, like, nature is kind of upset. Yeah. You know, they are disturbing something. It's definitely one of the few shots that kind of indicates that, which we'll talk about with SQUIRM. There's a lot of that where it's like, yeah, nature's fucking pissed off, man, and it's coming for you. You kind of deserve it a little bit.
You know, SQUIRM and frogs would have been a good pairing, I think. You've seen that movie Frogs?
No, I've never seen Frogs, but you know what?
James Mason and
Oh, well, do you know, we are going to be doing a virtual screening at the end of the month at some point, and maybe we'll tie it into this episode. So maybe we'll do Frogs or like Empire of the Ants or something. There's a couple different sort of revenge
in terms of
echo,
the sense of nature fighting back and all that kind of stuff. I feel like Frogs had some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't get that feeling as much in this. I do feel like SQUIRM has like that punishing dread of we're getting you for for a disruption, whereas you get to this and he's just like, well, this guy's friendly with the killer whales, so it's fine. The killer whales just fucking murked that octopus who was just pissed off for stupid reasons. And then it's a warm little romantic, like, oh, we're sailing away, we got the octopus, and oh, look, my whale buddies, they're fine. We're reunited again.
It's so
and Henry Fonda and John Huston just disappear for the entire.
Right.
Yeah,
I was like, did he ever write the article about what happened here? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
it was a very different movie by the time it got to the end of the movie. I will say, I kind of forgot what it was.
That is something I felt deeply was like, and I think that's what I meant by at the beginning when I said everything kind of felt disconnected. I felt like I was focusing on the right characters, and then all of a sudden the movie's like, nope, this is who you were supposed to be focusing on the whole time. I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough, I guess. So yeah, it just felt a little jarring that way.
Regarding all the diving, also just from my perspective, limited experience with the people who produce and stuff, I paid X amount of fucking money for this diving footage. We're gonna put it in the fucking movie. I don't, find a way. Like, you know what I mean? Like from on high. This sometimes those requirements.
Yeah, I wonder if someone said the same thing. Like maybe Shelley Winters was like, "I need to be wearing a sombrero for an entire scene." It's like, look, if it'll keep Shelley Winters happy, and she'll do all the scenes where she's like buying the boys walkie-talkies and buying them a sailboat, and which is is going to eventually connect to the whole Jaws like 4th of July celebration. They're going to put on this, this big show and race despite this sort of danger, even though that is not dramatically set up at all, because Henry Fonda is like nice, and there's no like evil guy. There's no character like the mayor who's like, no, we're putting this on anyway. Like Henry Fonda learns about what his underling has been doing and goes, stop that. Stop upsetting the octopus.
Maybe it would have been too much like Noah Cross, but I mean, I feel like John Huston could have been the rich guy.
Oh yeah,
but malevolent.
No, spot on. I think you're right. Obviously, it couldn't have been done because obviously part of why Houston was ever looked at was because Henry Fonda couldn't do the lead role anymore. But I do think you're right that Henry Fonda playing the sort of journalist who is trying to has a moral backbone, and John Huston as the evil rich guy makes a lot more sense, especially when you consider that he was definitely hired because of the sort of post Chinatown revival. Especially, right? So absolutely, I think you're 100% correct.
And then I guess with Shelley Winter, like the one of the last notes I had was that like some of the dialogue they try to do the very it's almost like I don't know if it's sentimental is the word, but it's like this happy-go-lucky family kind of stuff, especially in the beginning, where they're almost, I don't know, it's too much, like where the kid will pop up and be like, "Oh, you want dinner?" and he's just like, "Oh, ma," like that kind of shit. And I just it was a little too, it seemed fake, honestly. It seemed kind of like because of maybe it was the Italian director working with the Americans. Sometimes I know that when we watch this, like some of the mannerisms and stuff and the way that people talk, because they're being directed by someone that might not understand the language as much, every once in a while there gets like a little bit of mistranslation. But that doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't seem to, because I think they speak like there's two streams that I got with this when I got the movie. There was a Spanish or an Italian one, and then there was a English one, and I wasn't sure if like it's an
Italian movie, they're all dubbed, and you're not going to get a true version anywhere.
So so all the dialogue is dubbed afterwards, correct? Like that is kind of
At the very least, here he has the American actors dubbing themselves, so like that's kind of helpful for the English version. But yeah, it does become funnier when you're getting into when it's not the main like 4 or 5 cast members. The rest of the cast is filled out with Italian actors, and so that's when you do get it feels more like a traditionally sort of like Italian genre film. Although Jamie, I think that
which I do like, but yeah,
Shelley Winters and the kid. The thing that was the funniest to me was that they set his whole arc up so that his friend can be one of the few characters in the movie to die, and they just have this sad moment where they go, "We saved like every single kid except for his best friend," and you get the moment of having his mom there to realize that like the one kid died and the other survived, and they go, "Oh, that's awful." Yeah. And then that's the last we see of any of those characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just set up for the emotional, pull basically.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it is supposed to be like, and then we cut to Bo Hopkins because he's going to get revenge for all of these horrible things the octopus is doing. So there's a little bit there, but that's
oh, you know
really
what? There was one shot that for some reason, just because it's so strange, it kind of freaked me out. When the girl is looking after the two guys get pulled under when they're doing their little boating vacation thing, and the legs that come out from the water are just on a perfect 90-degree angle. And for some reason, that was like weird to me.
What was that?
I wrote that down.
The octopus was like taunting them with feet.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. I was like, that seems so like that's the perfect angle. It seems on purpose, and it just was so strange to me. But yeah, I wrote that down, so I thought that was funny.
Weird octopus, but yeah, that is Tentacles. If we're pivoting towards the reductive rating around here, this one ended up definitely in kind of like the firm 2 territory for me, and and you know, partial, and not because it's an unabashed and blatant like cheap Italian Jaws knockoff. I actually think that that's potential for a B movie to have fun with, you know, that trend and, you know, do some of its own things within that could have been a lot of fun. And I think the early goings of this, again, I had promise for this. Like, I liked, you know, John Huston is maybe unconvincing, but he's at least, you know, amusing in a kind of eccentric way. He is like doing weird stuff with his voice in that role as he's going around. And the early sequences, as we were talking about, of the octopus attack and bringing a stroller into the water and then leaving a waterlogged corpse floating and, you know, eventually tearing the back of a boat off and, you know, attacking a girl in this very sort of like nighttime red lighting. And there's moments in here where you can see when John Huston says, "Oh, that infernal beast," or whatever. You're just like, yeah, like the mood could have been there. And then you're just like, oh, there's so much just like lazy, naturalistic, we're just going to cash in on this trend, give you sort of vague characterizations that maybe feel a little like similar enough that they're identifiable, but we're not actually going to, then they just kind of disappear from a movie. And, you know, I just thought that weirdly enough, despite objectively containing a number of giant octopus attack sequences, the overall just pacing and momentum of this would just felt really dry and really endless to me. And part of that could have been low budget limitation. Part of that could have been some of the deals they had where they're like, yeah, you need to have 3 scuba diving sequences and you need to have 2 minutes of this comedian and you need to have 10 minutes of like the 4th of July, just like we guerrilla shot it. And here's everyone just having fun. And then 10 more minutes of the octopus head sticking out of the water following a boat. And you're being like, okay, well, now we've been watching this for about 25 minutes. And then we're just going to cut to a bunch of boats overturned to give you the idea of like, oh yeah, cool shit happened after that. And we just, you know, we didn't, cameras weren't on for that part. Sorry about that. You know, we don't know.
Trust us.
Yeah, it was really cool though. And so that after a while did kind of get to me, that there's so many minutes long sequences of people swimming that just go well beyond generating tension. And then when it eventually gets into, you know, sort of the longer action sequences, it's this very crude and kind of murky looking puppetry where you just get endless close-up incomprehensible shots of a whale puppet having a tug-of-war match with a tentacle puppet, and you're just like, okay, that's, you know, and I had more fun watching Bo Hopkins monologue to his killer whales about how much he loves them and how much he respects them and needs to ask them to do this huge favor and kill this octopus for them. And but yeah, that was kind of the limits of, I think, sort of the fun appeal I got out of this. And last note I had was shout out Roberto Dittore Piazzoli, who was the guy who shot Piranha 2: The Spawning for James Cameron, who shot this movie. There were moments in this where I kind of went, you know, if he's given the chance to do the Italian, you know, lighting and have the prog rock score playing like during that attack on that girl at night, I think they could have had a lot more fun with this movie. They needed to Italian it up, but it really did feel like this producer was like, no, this is for, it's got American stars in it. This is for young American boys at the drive-in to pay attention to, not make out with their girlfriends. You know, like
it does feel like it has like some weird Italian exploitation charm, but then it's all kind of just pulled back, and it does, I think, need a little more of that. And they
needed to commit. So yeah, that's why it lands in that territory for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think it's a 2 out of 5 as well.
In the same way.
I didn't even mean to do it. Like
there it is.
I do it every week. I just can't help myself.
You devil!
I'm honestly proud of myself.
You devil!
Unbelievable. But it does need more like imaginative attack sequences. I think, especially when I really did like that first one that we were talking about with the baby. Just that, and it's really simple. It's not like it really shows it. It's just there's some style to it where it's kind of like, here's the conversation that's distracting. You get the slow zoom in onto the baby, and then it's gone. And there is something there that I think even what they try to do later on with all the like implying the violence, that one actually works. It needed more, I think, kind of storyboarding with some of its action sequences, more actual close-ups of like the tentacle wrapping around somebody and then maybe reacting, or just
they
something.
apparently wanted to do a miniature thing with it, like attacking the Golden Gate Bridge or something like that, but they I think ran out of time and money.
Oh, okay, that would have been cool for sure. And I do like the idea of the orcas becoming this like ally that hunts it down and helps kill it. The Gleason's love for them, I think, was kind of charming, and I enjoyed him monologuing about it. I did like the prog rock soundtrack here and there when it's used, so that was kind of part of the Italian charm that snuck in. And yeah, I just think it's way too drawn out. It needs to be cut down by like 20 minutes. Those underwater sequences are just they're too drawn out, and there's not enough fresh ideas happening throughout them. And having 3 of them, you really needed that. So yeah.
For you, Charles.
How I came in, just like, because even if it were shorter for me, I just need more visual engagement, personally. A level of compositional care and a deliberateness. It felt very undeliberate in terms of its cinematography. So that's, and the performances, particularly John Huston. I want to love everything he's in, and but again, I think my experience at the time was the same. It was just like all these fucking stars, and I'm not remotely engaged. Hey, baby, let's make out.
It
is fascinating that this was like the A picture, and you're trying to be like, people are really, really not. It's probably particularly
it had
engaged with
TV ads. I remember, like, it was, I'm sure that because I didn't know anything about SQUIRM. I'm sure I went because of the TV ads. Oh, it'll be like Jaws. Cool. I didn't have any kind of snobbery about that. I was kind of like, cool. If you're going to hit some of those notes, I'm all in. And that's why I just took away this wonderful lesson, which I think is a good one.
It's a very instructive double feature in that way. That it's like, a big movie with American stars can do nothing for you, and then a guy with just some willpower and some friends and thousands of worms can create something that stands the test of time.
Was worms.
For real.
So, but that's a perfect segue, I think, into wrapping up Tentacles here, and we're going to be moving right along here, and we're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about SQUIRM and some wriggling worms rather than an octopus. So you'll want to stick around for that.
Terror grips every nerve in your body. You want to scream, but you can't. Your heart beats so fast it feels like it's going to burst.
Jerry?
They're dead!
SQUIRM, a new experience in pure fright.
All right, we are back, and we are talking SQUIRM, the 1976 creature horror film written and directed by Jeff Lieberman, starring Don Scardino, Patricia Percy, and R.A. Dow as residents of a small town in Georgia who find themselves in a battle with a horde of man-eating mutant worms created by a freak electrical storm. This is our first time talking about cult filmmaker Jeff Lieberman, who would become, I think, more well-known for later for his sort of LSD mind control science fiction horror film Blue Sunshine, and his post Friday the 13th sort of backwoods survival quasi-slasher Just Before Dawn. But before either of those films, he made his directorial debut with this man-eating mutant worm film called SQUIRM, a film apparently inspired by a childhood memory of his older brother's strategy for getting fishing bait worms for free by putting electrical cables into the ground and shocking them to the surface, as well as, according to him, a childhood love of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. He even actually apparently tried to get Bernard Herrmann to score the film, but he died. Yeah, there's a couple people he apparently almost had for this film where I was like, damn, this would have been a bigger movie if he had been like, I guess Martin Sheen was like at one point going to be the lead role, and Kim Basinger was going to be the girl. I was just like, okay, you know, like that. Bernard Herrmann and those two actors being involved in the film, and I think that this maybe has a little bit more of a cultural longevity than it does, even though it has experienced more than Tentacles on a lot less money. But Lieberman also, briefly researching him, apparently he did office work for Janus Films back in the 70s before they were restoration partners with Criterion, which is what I guess was apparently where he was able to meet contacts and producers and was able to end up finding some interest in investment for his script, which again, very similarly to Tentacles, is another film that was greenlit in the wake of Jaws Summer, which was, everyone was like, I need mine, I need this, I need that. And it was a very low budget creature feature, revenge of nature, eco horror film. It was a huge trend. Frogs, locusts, spiders, bears, ants, bees, piranhas, gators, boars, slugs, didn't really matter. If you could put it on the poster and the poster could look awesome, and people would go, damn, I can't wait to see some people run scared away from whatever fucking animal or nature. Yeah, I mean, with Australian movies, it was literally just like, remember Long Weekend? It was like trees.
Yeah. What was that one about ants? And it was like they had them kind of in the laboratory, and eventually they got loose, and then they started.
That was Phase 4, which is maybe the most artistic psychedelic example of a movie like that.
yeah, that movie's a trip. It's unbelievable. But I have to say, this poster, especially for SQUIRM, is one of my favorites for sure that we've ever. Just out of all the films that we've ever covered,
Jamie, I feel like you could put that on one of like your band like metal shirts or something. Yeah, like
I could just take that without SQUIRM, put Along Came a Spider below it. It's like that thing is insane. It's so cool. I want it on a shirt so bad. I've got to go.
Charles, when you were gearing up for this double feature, I know it's been a long time, and you might literally have just no memory of it. But was it so Tentacles was the draw, or was there also a poster for SQUIRM, and you were like, okay, well,
I definitely did not know. I did not know that a movie called, because again, it was the second feature,
right?
And quite often one drives away during the second feature if you realize it's not going to grab you. Like, had it been the other way around, I probably would have left Tentacles, But I have to say, in watching it, the thing I remember from it is the opening, just the incredible sense of atmosphere and wet, and
that like Texas Chainsaw style like crawl that it does, which I wasn't sure if that was like meant to be tongue in cheek or not, but like it ends up being a real dread inducing like horror film at a certain point. But like that they have a crawl where they're just like, we're gonna try and sell you that this was like a real thing that happened to the citizens of like Fly Creek in Georgia. Yeah.
Well, that's what I loved about. Actually, that was one of the things, and it reminds me of Return of the Living Dead too.
Right.
When it offers this kind of this is an actual event, or it's based on a true story, or even though absurdly, I like that. It kind of draws me in. It certainly did with Return of the Living Dead, and. But I mean, I don't know. I'm a sucker for that. I mean, like my memory of it. Oh, okay, I'm in. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then just the the rain and the wet and being from Florida, and I guess it was shot in Georgia, but the same kind of it felt like Gainesville actually. Although I saw this movie in South Florida when I was still in high school, but my grandfather was a professor in Gainesville, so I spent a lot of time in Gainesville. and just the wetness and I keep saying the wetness and the sense of the soil soaked and
no, but I mean, you're right. This is a movie that uses its Georgia location work to actually like give it a sense of atmosphere, to give it mood. Because we didn't talk a whole lot about it in Tentacles, but that was also partially shot in Georgia. The city stuff is all Atlanta, and then all the sort of shoreline stuff is like California. It's like San Diego or something like that. And you really couldn't, like, they weren't pulling much from the location work, whereas here you do get a sense that, you know, maybe it's a little crude and clumsy at times, but like this tries to aim for like a little bit of that like southern gothic, like small Georgia town, and we're going to spend some time with the locals at the diner, and then we're actually going to, you know, focus on the fact that, you know, the sense of heat and wetness, as Charles has been pointing out, like it is in the movie.
Yeah, and it has the complete opposite effect of what I was saying with Tentacles, where all of these characters do feel like they kind of interconnect, and even if they don't, there is this true small town feel that it has whenever, you know, especially with the New Yorker character, what's his name, Mick,
as a contrast.
Mick,
Mick. Him kind of discovering it all as he goes into each space. You do get a sense of like the small town community and how everybody knows each other and all of that. I also really like the beginning, just speaking on the atmosphere with the lightning and like the wet ground and mud. But there's this like lullaby.
And the worm screaming.
Yeah.
The worm screaming.
Yeah, there's like a boy singing a lullaby with an orchestra behind it that kind of comes later on too, I think, in the finale. But then it cuts to those close-ups of the worms that they use all the time, and it's a very similar close-up to what I was saying with Tentacles, where it's like you'll see a real octopus's eyeball or something like that, but with this it's just like a microscopic worm, and then you see the opening of its mouth, and they add like a scream that I read that they used they used something from the movie Carrie, and I can't remember if it's like a pig squeal or something like that, but they altered it, and that's what the scream is for the worm. But yeah, it's kind of cool, and it does add this whole effect that they're like, you know, obviously a little bit more mutated or something, or at least very angry, which is kind of a fun little effect. So,
well, it's also just interestingly shot. You know, you got this like essentially macro photography of the worms. You know, I mean, as far as the eye could go from these wider shots, close-ups, wider, you know, that you're constantly visually engaged. And it reminds me, if you've ever seen a movie called The Sadist, black and white movie from the 60s. Yeah, great movie. A lot of the cinematography, and I know that was Vilmos Zsigmond or Will Zsigmond.
Yeah, it was one of his earliest movies. People don't know that, but it's in beautiful black and white.
But there's some great shots, like when the boy and the girl are walking toward a house, and it's shot from within the house with the window sill and the windows and stuff, and you're seeing them outside. Just very creative use of space, and again, visually arresting. And again, it's in the theme of this show, to contrast it with what I just saw as this kind of flat, boring shit with the tentacles. This was it just woke me right up. And again, maybe if I'd already, you know, messed around with my friend, and now it was time to just focus on a movie. But it was a movie that really grabbed me, and particularly the cinematography, which again, I wasn't even aware of it until I'm watching it now, because I wasn't like a film guy or whatever. But now seeing it now, I see all the things that it brought, from macro photography.
Yeah, like
beautiful color.
Yeah, you are definitely more visually hooked by the movie immediately, because they give you that crawl, they give you this, you know, that they do set you up exactly with letting you know what's happening, which is that this, you know, sort of sea coast rural area of Georgia has been struck by this sort of storm, and it downs these power lines. It removes all the sort of electricity from the town, which forces them to all be sort of like outside and in the heat and all of that. And the downed power lines sparking and hitting the ground is what is causing these, you know, these worms to scream. And you know, you do get a little bit more of, you know, they're not being punished for any sort of like corporate thing like they are, I guess, in something like in Tentacles, where it's like the company is drilling too loudly or whatever it is. And but you do get a sense that like the sort of unnatural modern comforts of people who live in this rural area, nature is being like, we don't like that shit. We don't like when there's 300,000 volts going into the ground and wet mud is conducting it through our entire bodies. And as a result, the sense of just like atmospheric dread of this thing is coming for you now. And that kind of sits with you through the more sort of weirdly Southern Gothic drama elements of the movie, when you do get characters like the sort of hick, like worm farmer Roger, who works for his dad's company, Willie's Bait, and obviously the pretty neighbor girl he has a crush on, Jerry, who lives in this sort of like modest little home with her mom Naomi, her sister Alma, and obviously has this, I guess, dorky long distance boyfriend Mick, played by Don Scardino, who is the one bussing in from New York with his, I will say comically, with his fishing rod and his suitcase, his tennis racket. He's ready for a fucking vacation. He's like, oh, I'm in the deep like woods. I was mistaken.
Yeah, even the way
on
he
what
arrives
this trip was
is kind of that, like, you know, he's out of water kind of thing. Like he's going trudging through the forest with his 3 bags and just, you know, looking completely out of place.
The sense of fish out of water comedy of him going into that diner and ordering an egg cream, which I did not know what that was. I had never heard of that. And then all of a sudden you have the diner woman being like, what is that? Like, explain to me what that is. And it's such a childish drink too, where it's like he wants like just pure like chocolate syrup basically with like carbonated water or something.
I think they also have a conversation between the daughter and the mother beforehand that seems like he may or may not show up, so he seems kind of like an immature boyfriend in some regard, or at least like really not embracing the place that he is going to be with his girlfriend. He kind of
and they also make weird comments about how he's like the first man around the house in a while too. Like there's this weird sort of like sexually repressed kind of quality to some of the way that these characters like talk to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And he had like he's an interesting character because he actually did really annoy me, probably on purposely so in some regard, in that first half. And then as it goes on, he like channels into a little bit more of the hero. So it didn't feel like as conventional as I thought it would with something like a SQUIRM. They even set up Roger in this almost like it obviously does not go to these extremes, but it has like a Stray Dogs moment almost, where Jerry is changing and then she like accidentally is in front of the window when Roger looks at her, and then Roger starts this kind of like infatuation with her that leads to kind of a, you know, very questionable moment with him and
the idea of the locals resenting a kind of outsider coming in and being with a girl who they think you know, they have some sort of sense of ownership over, even though she's like borrowing his it's so funny that to get in her good graces he's like, yeah, you can borrow my dad's truck filled with hundreds of thousands of worms to go and pick up your boyfriend. And obviously that goes incredibly wrong. Like at one point we just hear like a lurch while he's sitting in the truck and you're like, well, all the worms fell out, I guess.
Well, we know what this movie's called.
You know, and then there's a worm like in his drink, which all the locals think that he's playing like a prank on them. And, you know, his sense of humor in response to it doesn't help when he's just like, you know, they're just like, they don't like tourists. And he's like, I'm not a Taurus, I'm a Libra. And you're like, fucking city.
Well, he also, that definitely was, I think, one of the answers that pissed me off. And then the other one was when the sheriff stops him and he asks like why he's here, and he just goes, pleasure. And it's just like, and the thing is like some of these answers in some other context could be,
but again, that's that
charming.
Sexual thing too. No business.
Sure.
I'm not here on business. I'm here on pleasure only.
And this is already when he knows that they're kind of upset with him and they don't trust him and that they think that he's pulled a prank on them already. And at that point I was just like, dude, I get what you're doing, but just, you got to scale it back a little bit. These people are they're going to kill you, and they're not going to tell anyone out of this town about it. No one from New York's going to find out, brother. And so it was like, he was kind of making me mad, but I think that's on purpose. There is a little bit of a arc there. So
I think I almost think it's a clumsily, obvious. Okay, this is the thing to. I mean, the egg cream to me. I mean, I lived in New York. Egg creams are pretty common. They're not like kids' drinks. I mean, people, hey, I'll have an egg cream. It's like it's just this thing. But I think as much as anything, it was just to show how much of a fish out of water he is, and I mean, it's just like what some would say a kind of script shorthand. Okay, now we know who he is. I feel like then the obnoxious humor, as a older person now, I'm like, it's not so. It's an unsophisticated, unsophisticated script thing, like pushing it a bit. But again, it's a movie about worms that eat you, so it's not like Edward Albee.
Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
I was gonna say I was a little surprised that there was a slow burn, a little bit of a sleepy small town sort of like hangout quality to it, which is just maybe a little indicative of more of like a 1970s sort of vibe to it as well. And it does take a little bit of time to make that transition to the more sort of drive-in grindhouse gross out sort of movie it ends up kind of becoming. And you do spend some time trying to watch these characters just enjoy their time together, and briefly, she ends up taking him to like a local antique dealer she has an appointment with, and the creepy details are sort of loaded into some of these sequences, like when they go to his house, and it almost does look like the Texas Chainsaw House or whatever, and he's having it's like a garage sale junk just like strewn all over the lawn, and he doesn't answer his door, and there's a skeleton on his property they can't identify, and the worms are already at it, but they don't know that, and so it's letting us in on some of those sort of creepy atmospheric qualities of that, but it is doing it in a way where we are going to set up some of these, dynamics, like they're going to go to the sheriff and tell him to come and look at it, but, it's not there. So he thinks once again, this city fucking weasel is playing pranks on me, and in his thick Southern accent, he's telling him to watch himself, because the next time, he'll book him, and he won't be able to get a lawyer because all the phones are dead because the power's out, and, there's a sense of Mick trying to get used to how the country folk operate. He has a conversation with the sister. He has to deal with poison ivy at one point, and
when he's helping, at one point, when he finds the bones and he goes back and they're gone, and so the sheriff hates him even more now because he thinks he's lying to him again. So it just feels like it kind of keeps building up. And I do like to there's moments with Roger where you kind of understand where he might be coming from, where he has a more violent nature to him, because when he's dealing with his dad, he's poking and prodding him about losing the worms, and then at a certain point he even punches him in the chest, I think. And then they go on to talk about the worms and how these specific ones are ones that bite. And I like that they have a certain line where they say you have to hold them by the tail. And then they're like, well, which side is the tail? And they're like, the one that doesn't bite you. and then as the film goes, that line becomes honestly kind of scary and ironic in a way, because the piles of worms that we'll eventually get to are just insane, to the point where there's no way you could discern what the tail is, what the foot is, and it wouldn't, or the head is, it wouldn't matter, because there's literally millions of them just engulfing you. So, all those little setups,
because it starts out with worms just there's one worm in your drink, there's one worm sliding down the wall behind you, and there's
that first worm when he's at the dining room table, the New York kid, and it's just for a second,
right behind him.
I do recall the quickening of my pulse of this. Yeah, it just, to me, I mean, in retrospect now, I realize to me I love the small scale of it, and the shots, to me, carefully considered imagery, and then there's almost this body horror part of it.
Oh yeah,
particularly when she's in the bathtub, and it does make me. I mean, it came from within. The Cronenberg film had already come out. Is that correct?
I
because there's a moment with the bathtub that reminded me, and I didn't see it came from within until a decade later, probably, where there's that whole bathroom thing where the parasite goes up a woman.
Yeah,
he's in the bathtub.
Yeah, I was trying to remember because over here that's called Shivers, and you are correct. It came out a year earlier.
Oh, yeah, right. Yep.
Year earlier. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if they just independently envisioned, but
no, you're right. Like the shots, especially because we were talking about how with Tentacles, like there were early moments where you're like, oh yeah, the build up and the mystery of grabbing that stroller and the sense of filmmaking craft to get you to tensely watch this and pay attention to it, and bam, there it is. And there are little moments like that where you have the worm on the sliding down the wall behind him and then it's gone, or you have her trying to turn on the faucets and not seeing the worms, but giving us that low angle shot looking up at the actual shower head where we can see that worms are coming through the pipes and all of that, but her not noticing it. Like, again, that dramatic irony of we know the creepy place that this is going to, and these characters don't realize how surrounded they are about to be until really they do that little fishing trip with Roger, where they kind of do it as a little bit of like an apology to be like, yeah, we think we let your worms loose when we were at the diner, like, sorry about that. And they end up grabbing them. And the first time they even grab them, you're a little freaked out because you're like, I know what these worms are up to right now. And so just seeing something as innocuous as they're grabbing the worms as bait to put on their fishing rods, and I was already a little bit stressed about that. And then then obviously he ends up getting bit on the arm, and Mick ends up going back to land for first aid, which he ends up taking that opportunity to instead go and like inspect the skeleton, which they find in Roger's truck. And he goes to like a dentist office where he confirms with the records that it's that old antique dealer, and they're like, oh fuck, worms are already eating people alive. And so he's piecing that together while Roger is alone with Jerry, and as he puts it, happy as a bump on a log, and he's getting a little handsy with her, and is immediately attacked by the mutant worms, who we learn are fans of consent, and right. Heroes. and this is where the sort of body horror I think comes in, where you just get that horrifying prosthetic effect of the worms like literally shooting into his face and going underneath his skin as he screams and sort of runs away. And this specific effects, by the way, this is the stuff that's by Rick Baker, who had done The Exorcist and It's Alive and the 70s King Kong at the time. Obviously did so many incredible films we've talked about, too many to name: Videodrome, Star Wars, American Werewolf, all that kind of stuff. Incredible. And he was specifically hired to do the worm face effect, because the rest of the effects in this movie, I will say, is it's a bunch of rubber worms, or it is refrigerated ones from out of state in Maine, apparently all the local fishermen in Maine were very upset about that. And then millions of donated ones, apparently, from like the University of Georgia, who for some reason were just sitting on tons of blood worms.
We've been waiting for this movie to be made.
But yeah, like a lot of the effects they end up doing are just throwing worms into a location. It's a lot of worms, and they end up using them really well. But this worm face character and how Roger ends up turning into just like angry zombified guy with worms sticking out of his face. He looks like somewhere between like a Fulci zombie and like a Romero zombie. Yeah, but he's still human. He hasn't made the full transition yet. He's just getting angry, and then you're wondering, is his rage also partially coming from the worms? Are they getting into his mind? Like, I don't know.
Like, that's exactly how I started reading it, because like eventually, as the worms just start to engulf everything. I mean, there's these shots where Mick is approaching the house, and literally from the foundation they are just flooding like a waterfall out of the foundation of the house, and it's so creepy. Like, I really just the amount of them, I think, is what's so impressive to be in camera. And then they do this one thing where Roger and Mick kind of have a scuffle, because Roger's trying to get to Jerry again, and he topples him over the railing of a staircase, and then he just gets like swallowed by what it looks like almost like a whirlpool of worms. And it's I loved the effect. I thought it was
that was one of the most impressive images. There was almost like an apocalyptic sinkhole quality to how many worms are there, and we're gonna return you to the earth. And it was so funny. So apparently I forget, so Jeff Lieberman has been interviewed about this movie, and I think similarly to what you were saying, Charles, he's had a lot of fans who have really read into his movie, and they've talked about the subtext of the fact of, man disrespecting the earth. And one of the big ones he's heard a lot is man's like mortality and his fate to eventually go into the dirt and become like worm food and all this. And he was like, this is all great. I love it. He's like, I did not think about any of this when I was like making the movie.
Right.
Not even the sexuality of the suppressed sexuality of the characters or anything like that. He was just like, yeah, no, we were just, it would be cool if a worm ate a guy and he fell into the earth.
Yeah. And I do like that they kind of like, because you have the image of the worms like half entering Roger's skin in his face, it does, and then he starts acting differently. It does appear as if they're like taking over his mind and creating this giant worm hive mind to control the humans.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think that's how I saw it too.
Yeah, because even when he gets resurrected or whatever you want to call it from like being engulfed by all of those worms, he comes back out, and then to get up the stairs, he looks like he's crawling, like he's doing a little worm crawl thing. So it almost appears as if physically he's becoming more and more worm-like or something. And then he bites Mick later on too. So he's definitely channeling his newfound family,
which is all unfortunate because he hates worms. He's the guy who's like, I work with them, but I find them dirty and gross. And he's the one who is given the director's story about, how he is almost has this traumatized image in his head involving worms where his dad electrocuted them out of the ground. And he's just like, that just freaked me out and kind of stuck.
He was a very sympathetic character, I found, except when he became kind of I'm just happy as bumping along.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this guy's actually, kind of a moron too, though. It's like, it's only so much you can, I mean, I have compassion for morons, but what I'm saying is a sexually aggressive one.
Right.
Less so.
Can't read the room. Yeah.
The one scene that I thought was like, it like genuinely just shocking that it happened, and it happened so fast, is when they're having dinner together. And then the worms have been like destroying the roots of a tree. So it eventually smashes the entire dining room. And I think it's like, doesn't the mother die and get crushed in that moment?
No, she doesn't die. She gets relegated to the side of like the room. She gets kind of just held in the head. And then she, at one point, she starts like knitting. And I only remember this because there's one of my favorite shots in the entire movie is her like grabbing like her scissors to like cut the string or something like that. And it's this incredible tilt following her hand going to grab the scissors. And there's a bunch of worms next to the scissors that she doesn't see. And she goes and she pulls the scissors, and it continues to tilt all the way into the ceiling where the worms are coming through a hole in the roof. And again, just that slow tilt up to be like the worms are making their way into the home. There's more deliberate sort of sophistication building to the ideas of being like, I want to show you nature destroying the domestic in a way. And maybe again, it's not intentional, but it's at least intentionally photographed to be tense and interesting to look at. And like, that was one of the moments I thought of the most, because again, I don't think we see the mom after that until she is just covered in worms in a rocking chair. And you're like, holy fuck. Right. And like, that was all the setup you needed for it, was the worms are making their way into that room. Your brain does the rest. And that's like an effective way of like, okay, we can't do a whole sequence of this, but these two shots will have power, together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like there's an actual, like a readable escalation that happens with the use of the worms. Whereas like with tentacles, it was kind of like, the most exciting thing that happens was the very first thing with the baby. And then we were kind of like looking for different ways that they could, use their imagination to make that interesting again.
Well, and we were complaining about variety. This is the one where I was like, oh man, they had like, when it does go full on grindhouse movie thrills and worms are coming out of the shower heads and they're filling up the entire room so that when the one sister opens the door, they literally fly out like a room, like one of those commercials where like a room is filled with candy and it all falls out or something. But it's just thousands and thousands of worms.
It spills out like the blood in the elevator in The Shining or something, but it's just worms at a certain point.
That's really an incredible image. The bit where they go back and they find Papa Willie, the worm farmer, and there's this great gore moment where Mick tears his shirt open and they see like worms like rummaging around in his guts through his exposed like rib cage.
That's one of my favorite shots. Totally. That's one of my favorite shots.
Great.
Yeah.
And didn't really require much other than volume of worms.
Yeah, no, I actually read
Yeah.
about that particular effect. Apparently they buried him underground and then just put like a fake body there.
Oh,
That
cool.
makes total sense. Total
It's
sense.
very
Yeah,
effective. Yeah. And it just, again, it does this, it's a great way of still, it's on the cheaper side in the sense that it's not showing like somebody getting their guts torn out or eaten out or anything like that, but just that the amount of detail that they put in the shot, just in that stationary, body prosthetic, and then all, again, literally thousands of worms just eating guts.
Yeah,
It's great.
and also taking advantage of ones where you don't even see. One of my favorite examples in this entire movie of just a moment that grossed me out was the moment of the sheriff enjoying a sort of smiley, giggly, sort of like post-coital cigarette in the jail cell bed where they're attacked. And it's this incredibly gross setup where she is in bed with him going, "Oh, stop it. Stop doing that." And you're meant to obviously think that his hands are, touching her, doing something. You're not, and he's just like, "It ain't me." And you're meant to realize, oh, those worms are down there fiddling about. And you're just like, this movie finds so, like, a surprising amount of ways, despite the fact that the main effect is just they imported a ton of worms and threw them around a set. They find a lot of different setups and a lot of different contexts to actually show you, here's the different ways the worms would attack you, and to be just perversely gross. Even something as simple as when they're the two kids are the ones who believe it. They're going around town saying we've seen a guy literally his guts eaten by worms, and we've seen a guy who looks like a slasher villain running around with worms sticking out of his head. No one's believing them. It's a boy who cried wolf kind of moment for the two kids. And he does it in that scene where everyone in the whole town is just slurping spaghetti like freaks.
Of course, right? Yeah. Oh my god.
Again, just the perversity of that, and it's all just through visual implication and visual storytelling. It's great.
Yeah, and I think Charles, you were mentioning that Roger kind of almost has like a Romero zombie-esque quality to him. There's one shot in it that is so Night of the Living Dead. It's crazy. It's when I think it's Jerry, and she's doing dishes, and he just kind of appears in the window, and he even has this like slow walk up to him. The face is very zombie-like at this point because he's been attacked by the worms, and it's just perfectly framed that way. And I like instantly wrote down Night of the Living Dead. This is such a Romero moment. So it was cool to see those little things kind of pop up and squirm. That was awesome. I was so pleasantly surprised by this movie, honestly, especially given again how much time it does take to have that it really does take its time to get to know the characters before they start doing more of the action beats and the horror beats. They sprinkle it, of course, just to keep you kind of tense, but they do really spend that time with Mick and Jerry, Roger and Jerry, specifically, I guess that kind of that trifecta of characters, but it's good. I do like it.
Well, also, and again with atmospheric shots. I mean, again, but that first opening again, I remember very little, from when I was 17, but I definitely remember the opening of this film, and then my impression. Again, not from the point of being a filmmaker, but just the point of watching it, like everything they did to make this movie is right here on screen. I see it. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Rick Baker effect would be the one thing that'd be kind of like, okay, this is a movie thing, and that costs money, and someone had to do that. But just the idea that you could just dump a barrel of worms on the floor, I that just stuck with me. That there's no tricks that are not achievable, I guess, is what it felt like. I really liked that about it. I could see the seams, but the seams were part of its effect, really.
Yeah. Like it's just you can achieve so much with just simplicity. I think is a really cool thing, because you're right. Besides, I think it's really Roger that is like the major part of the makeup, prosthetics, and all of that. And for the most part, they really do just find different ways of making piles of worms kind of threatening and scary. And that is like
whether it's like
watching
this
them...
slow tilt, or whether it's burying a guy in the ground and, you know, having it look like they're eating him alive, or, you know, they found so many different ways.
Or were they just putting one on the you know, sticking one on the wall?
Yeah. As easy as that.
And jumping out of frame, and then because it just falls on its own, because it's not really going to adhere to the wall, but it's just enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think what's cool too is setting it up in the beginning, having the single worms to start to bite people, and they're like, oh, this is very painful, just this one singular bite. And so then as you get into the pile of worms, it just heavily implies that this is going to be kind of this power that will overcome us at a certain point. So I think it does,
which
a
is
really
where
good
the
job of
macro photography and the squealing comes into, where you're just like, oh my god, like these things are incredibly vicious, incredibly angry, and they are punished. And again, like having such, you know, planned ideas of nature fighting back and punishing the domestic or the civilized world, with them literally sending a tree through their entire fucking house, and it looks like a disaster movie for like a sequence or something like that, right? Like
I love I also love when Mick becomes like, he has to become the kind of action hero or whatever and start battling the worms and battling Roger.
I did
and
laugh out loud when he
torch.
has to take off when he has to take off his plaid shirt, and I was like, he's literally shirtless hero mode, and then he turns his own shirt into a torch.
He's like Indiana Jones or some shit. It was awesome. I was like,
well, because it's the only thing he realizes. He's just like, oh, it's light, and I'm gonna walk around with a torch or with a candle, and, you know, again, it's a good device too to be like, we can then make this house, you know, it's at night and there's no electricity, so it's dark. The only thing that's lighting this is this directional light of the candle, and he's pointing it at just no matter where he's pointing it, it is a floor covered in worms, and it's just you're just grossed out.
It's creepy. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great.
It's good for the climax where he has to go in and actually it's good staging, because Roger is holding her in the attic. He has to get into this altercation with him again. And Jamie, you already mentioned it, but great shot where he throws him over the staircase railing and he ends up falling into a worm sinkhole, and then ends up coming back out while they're trying to get through the window, and he literally has to literally beat him to death with a flashlight. The only thing that was a little funny to me, and again, I think a kind of a charming limitation of the movie, is that in order to get themselves, like, they didn't really seem like they knew how they were going to get out of this situation. So like, we're just going to hide out in the tree all night. Which I was like, we already know they can eat through cheese. This is like one of the few things you've established in this movie. But at the very least, they do establish that, like, the power guy comes. He's like, hey, I'll fix the power. Nobody seems to care that I fixed the power.
Worms aren't pissed off anymore. We're all good. Don't worry.
Yeah, but you do get that lovely, lovely shot of, you think it's a little bit of like a happy moment of them being like, oh, we survived the night, and the sister hid in the trunk. Isn't that great? That one of the characters thought he was dead, wasn't dead. And then you just get that zoom out and that tilt down to the ground where you're like, yeah, but the worms are still down there somewhere.
Yeah, they're waiting for the next vibration.
Right.
I also
it's
like
a solid way to conclude it.
They do, just because this was also in Tentacles, that it's Jaws, any serial killer movie at this point as well, has the POV of the killer, and I do like you get the worm POV every once in a while, and then when it does eventually go to Roger, they give him the same POV. So that was just another example, I guess, that it's kind of connected to his whole hive.
He's going worm
thing.
mode.
Yeah, he's going worm mode. But yeah, no, I enjoyed this thoroughly. I had a great
time.
Me too.
Me too. If we're pivoting towards reductive rating round, this was definitely like solid to maybe even high 3 territory for me. I had a really, really good time with this. Again, it is one of those, low budget creature features, revenge of nature, eco horror. It came out in the wake of Jaws. So if you're into that kind of movie, or again, other movies Charles mentioned like Frogs or anything, I think you'll get you'll get quite a bit out of this, simply because the sort of Southern Gothic Georgian sort of small town location work and kind of atmosphere that it has. It is a decent sort of slow burn and sort of sleepy sort of hangout, to hang out with. Like, I actually, for the most part, enjoyed that stuff. I could see some if you're, not accustomed to watching 70s movies, maybe you could find it a little slow. But personally, I mostly enjoyed it, and I think that there is enough deliberate atmospheric setup, whether it's the sort of like opening imagery of the actual storm and the macro photography and the squealing, or whether it's little details like them finding a skeleton in the yard or a worm just on the wall behind him or appearing in his drink, or all these things that are then setting up your full on. If you can get through all of that stuff, when this does transition into the drive-in, grindhouse, gross-out horror stuff, it absolutely delivers. It is a great variety of, again, achievable effects, as Charles has been putting it, but like with enough imagination and effort behind the camera to sell it. That's what's been sort of instructive about this double feature, is that you can have more money and you can have American movie stars, but if you are not at least being like, well, this tilt is going to get the audience to feel this way, and when we cut to this, they're going to feel the impact of, those worms were coming through that hole and now grandma is fucking covered in them, and isn't that disgusting? And and again, all of the different varieties of a guy getting his guts chewed on, to a girl feeling like the worms are messing with her body under the sheets, to there's so many, to the sinkhole effects, to Rick Baker making a guy into a zombified worm face, and he literally calls himself Worm Face, which is like and again an incredible thing of what is psychologically happening to this man as becoming more worm-like. It's a very, very enjoyably nasty and kind of revolting movie at a certain point that again feels, you can tell this was inspired by this guy just being haunted by a childhood memory of being like, I'm going to put my fear on the screen for other people in a entertaining way. And I think he absolutely achieved this. And last note I have is I wanted to thank Charles for bringing this on, because this was a movie that had been on my radar that I had never watched, but I had known about this movie for a long time. So one of my all-time favorite movies is Brian De Palma's Blowout. And this movie is one of the posters on John Travolta's studio wall when he... Oh, wow. So I don't know if it's meant to be that the studio he works for is someone who did the sound for like that movie, and that's meant to be the implication. But that was the first time I ever saw this poster, and Jamie's right, it's an incredible fucking metal poster. So good. And it was the first time I literally looked it up. I was like, what is that poster in the background behind Travolta? And this was that movie. So I'm glad to have finally like knocked it off my watch list.
Apparently, nice. And I don't know, I this is what Lieberman said to Fangoria apparently, but I guess he got to ask De Palma, and De Palma answered, "We only use the best." So I don't, I am assuming he's just a huge fan of the poster and
Palma's
threw it
fan.
into
There
it,
you
which
go.
would be fucking rad as hell. But anyway, so yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. I think it's a really fun watch. I think that Mick actually has like a decent arc from like fairly unlikable to fairly believable hero that I did enjoy watching. Him eventually becoming shirtless torch guy, starting off as the New Yorker, ordering the milkshake. I can't remember what it was called now. There it is, egg cream. I thought was honestly very entertaining, and it was fun for me to actually kind of change my mind and actively see that a little bit. I think the setup of every character and how it does have that 70s drama hangout vibe, at least for the first half, I think the setup is worth the payoff. People that aren't used to it, like you said, I would understand maybe being like, where are these damn worms? But I promise you, once they start just piling on, I think it's so worth it. And I even think
and then all you have to do is double feature it with Tentacles, and you will be like, this is a perfect work of narrative economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I think the escalation of the worms is really great. Like it goes up from like just one to these literally millions of them on screen, and then you have kind of the Roger parasitic mind takeover thing that I think is really fun and really creepy. Honestly, Rick Baker does a great job with the effects, especially when the guts part too with the farmer. I thought was pretty incredible. The sinkhole, and honestly too, it's the movie like tonally it's silly. I mean, it is what it is based on like worms attacking people, but tonally it's really sincerely done, and that does add to the creepy factor of it, because I think that you can still watch it as kind of like a this kind of almost campy thing, but because of what it is, but it doesn't really let you a lot of the time. They do take the character seriously. They do take death seriously. When deaths happen, it is like more visceral and violent and less campy. So I think that was a good choice, honestly. So yeah, I would say 3 strong 3. I'd recommend it for sure.
Yeah, for you, Charles.
I don't do those number things,
Absolutely.
but I mean, it was great to see it again, actually, because I was trying to, recall what were the things that made me love it so much. And it's definitely the cinematography, great sense of depth, foreground, background, middle ground, and a lot of shots, genuine grossness. Just the pleasure of grossness in a movie, and yes, and an earnestly made, well made, well shot. Color was great, sound was great, creepy macro photography of worms. I mean, all that stuff, and ultimately, just from my perspective as a art maker, using what is available. Telling your story with what you have, and I don't mean to romanticize that process, because I'm sure they wanted to get as much as they could, and they we got Rick Baker, so we're going to use that for that one thing. But the Rick Baker thing definitely elevates it to a certain but then they can get away with just throwing bunches of worms around, because it sustains you, the horror of that moment with the handyman guy.
Yeah, well, the pleasure of grossness, I think, is a great way to summarize what we've been talking about today, and what people will be in for if they do decide to come see you and come see Twisted Issues.
Great segue.
There's some through line there, I think. But yeah, I think that is though going to wrap it up here. That was once again Tentacles from 1977 and SQUIRM from 1976. Thanks so much, Charles, for joining us and lending us your time and lending us your memories. I was very stoked when you said that you were interested in doing SQUIRM and you remembered watching it on a double feature with this, and I was like, that is perfect for our show. It's exactly how we formatted it. It's exactly what we wanted. It was so cool to go back and see what was a true blue drive-in double feature, and funny to get the full experience of like, oh yeah, the A picture was the disappointing one, the B picture is kind of where it was at.
That's our show, baby. That's what we want. Yeah, that's awesome.
No, I mean, and I do think it was a crossroads in my life. I feel like my life is full of, and one's life is full of epiphanies and mini epiphanies and so on, but that certainly was one that I remember affecting my approach to art. Again, not filmmaking then, because I wasn't into filmmaking, but and not just art, but appreciating art.
Well, you have revealed to the world an inception point for Charles Pinion, the art maker. It was it was sort of subconsciously born maybe the day that you were watching Tentacles.
Yeah.
Very possible.
But
very possible.
Thanks so much, Charles. Once again, this was an absolute blast. Please, everyone, buy the Twisted Issues Blu-ray. Please buy tickets to the Twisted Issues screening. Come see Charles if you are local to the GTA. We're going to be picking his brain more about himself and about the how Twisted Issues kind of came to be. But if you haven't seen it before, you're gonna want to see the mind meltingness with a crowd and hearing people react to some of the absurd and disturbing things that take place in that movie. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we can't wait. But yeah, for so that's what we should that should be the main takeaway for everybody. But for our listeners, we are also going to be back in 1 week's time over on the main feed where we're getting crazy. We're going to be over on the Patreon feed next week, where, as Jamie alluded to, there's a new Naked Gun movie coming out. We're going to finally talk about the ZAZ boys. We're going to do Airplane. We're going to do Naked Gun. It just makes a lot of sense over on the Patreon. You guys have also asked for that for a while. We're finally going to deliver there. And then in 2 weeks' time over on the main feed, I actually don't remember what the second film is yet, but the first film is The New Centurions, which I think is some sort of LA crime film. Do you know that one, Charles?
Yeah. I do.
Is that one good?
Just based on a Joseph Wambaugh novel.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period I just didn't want to see cops movies.
That's fair.
So I know I read the book. I know
George C. Scott, Stacy Keach, Richard Fleischer. These are all guys we like.
True.
Yeah, I think I'd need to see it again, but I certainly the book. I mean, Wamba writes a good cop yarn. I think The Onion Field is another Wamba movie based on a Wamba book that is quite good with James Woods as a creepy killer, and
we love that.
I'll have to watch this if I haven't.
Yeah, that's a good double feature, actually. Onion Field and New Centurions.
Okay, well maybe that's what our guest has picked. I literally haven't. I didn't write down the second movie, so I'm gonna need to go back and do that. It would be funny if that's what it turns out to be. Charles could just become the programmer of the show at a certain point.
I mean, they're both based on the same writer. I don't know if that is enough of a connection, but
yeah, we've definitely done that.
It would be an excuse to talk about James Woods, which we would take at every opportunity ever since we watched Cop.
Oh yeah, No, this is a young James Woods. I don't think he was as young as when he was in that Vegas movie. I'm not sure actually.
It looks like it's 79, so he's a little bit older than Night Moves, which is I think the youngest we've talked about him when he appears in that.
Oh right, yeah, yep.
He's in the Gene Hackman movie, Night Moves?
Yeah, he's the, when the young girl runs away with a stunt guy who, like, fills the planes or whatever, James Woods is the guy. So he's only in, like, 2 scenes, and Gene Hackman basically just grills him, and he's, like, a little teenage shithead working on cars.
Right.
But
I remember that scene. I guess I just maybe I didn't know who, because, again, I probably saw that when it came out, and I didn't maybe know.
This would be a great podcast show, is to just listen. Charles goes back and watches every movie he watches in the 1970s.
Hey, there's a lot of them, man. I mean, I remember Zardoz when I was like 15.
Oh, what a movie!
A wild one.
Yeah. In the drive-in.
That's awesome.
Yeah, speaking of John Borman,
to drive-ins.
we were just talking about him last week.
Oh yeah.
What a guy! But yeah,
that is John Morgan. Yeah.
Either way, guys, we could do this forever, but we are, I think, going to wrap it up here. Thanks so much for listening. And once again, come buy Charles's movie. It's fantastic. Come see it if you can. That's going to wrap it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.
Later.